All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm now used to saying good evening, good day, and good afternoon, but now stick to that because I'm sure the APAC, Asia Pac already has dwindled down. Europe's already probably going to bed. It's the wide, from it's a shining sheep from the other side, right? So we're covering both east and west coast here. Uh, we have had a great couple of days, and I want to welcome you all into this discussion, which I think we already teed off a few weeks back with our roundtable to get a sense of what should we discuss and what should we focus on. In the last 2 days, we have spent a extraordinary amount of time, on our core area of focus, which is cyber capacity building and talent. We also announced our the DOL contract that we own with several partners, and that's a fabulous boost to get something done, to get our programs funded. And I believe that will take us to the next 5 years. In fact, it's a significant win, and we would love to see what we can do together as a collective, higher ed, academia, and the cybersecurity professionals supporting this industry. What I wanted to also kind of reinforce is the fact that the higher ed sector is protecting the educational ecosystem, but it's also subject to the capacity issues and needs that are there, and together it presents a pretty good opportunity. It's a challenge. I think we all struggle every day to get the work done because of the people that we need support from. It's just not the leaders, but also the second tier leaders that typically you need to rise up very quickly, and then who can actually mentor, supervise, and execute on the plans that we build for them. So the gap between the top, the top levels leaders that you represent and the entry level people that we are going to get out of this apprenticeship program and the schools, whether it's 4 year college degrees or skills based certification, there is still a gap in the middle, right? That's one thing that we identified after we met in the roundtable. The second thing that we identified was the underfunding of higher ed sector security programs, which I think all of us lament about. We could all use a little bit more money. I think that's a refrain from across all sectors. But I think higher ed specifically has that issue. I think last time, and Andrew, you mentioned, George also emphasized on the fact that higher education institutions are like cities. We have to run the entire city, and with that, the responsibility is quite diverse. It's not just running one organization. And that needs a different thinking in terms of how can we provide or articulate the value add in the program, and so that we can get the commensurate funding. And right now, I think, Lanita, you had a pretty interesting role that you stepped on to, including the deputy CIO and also CISO, and you're going to see both, right? I think that is probably one solution. When we presented it to the executive leaders, they were thinking more CISOs would get that exposure to the businesses side, and also the kind of be the bridge between the risk management side as the executive function. And that is also an issue that the industry is struggling in general. Where does the CISO function report to, right? But I think
Okay.
you present a particular scenario which could be a meaningful solution for this. Um, the third thing that I would mention is the bridging the gap between the demand and the supply and the demand. We have a decent amount of from a CFF perspective, we have a decent amount of focus on supply. I think we have researched the problem well. We have the Global Commission for Cybersecurity Education. In fact, where Diana Burley just joined our board, so we have a lot of. She has worked with us for almost 2 years now or more. I think she has a tremendous kind of insight into how the academia works and how it works, kind of work with industry. But altogether, with the supply side, I think we are probably over prospecting on the supply side. We need to also focus on the demand side. What I mean by that is that if we put, say, 10,000, I mean, I'm just putting a hypothetical number, we wish to get that number, but 10,000 cybersecurity professionals or practitioners get ready on the workforce side. Getting them immediately productive on our programs is going to be a challenge, right? I don't know how many of you probably would feel confident that on day day one, after they graduate with a certificate or a certification, you want to put them on the toughest jobs, right? And that's where the middle layer comes, where you have second tier leaders who can actually take your vision and actually put into execution and guide mentor this career as well. So what we did over the summer and through the time we have met at the roundtable, we focused on a program for small business cybersecurity. So what we saw that enterprises are very well kind of aware of this problem. They get the attention of the technology providers, and Rob and I work for EY in our day job, so I mean we go there, right? We serve them. However, there has been a little skip in that whole economic scenario. You have the government and defense infrastructures. We get a lot of attention from the technology providers as well as the service providers. The medium tiers and the large enterprises also get that kind of attention. Then I think the industry has skipped over. Small and medium business went directly into the consumer side. So if 40% of the economy is actually not getting really as much as the potential stands, they're not getting served by this industry. So that is an industry which is getting underserved. And what we did is we latched onto that problem. We spent 2 hours yesterday with 4 different regions where we're rolling out a proof of concept program. I will not even call it pilot. I'm trying to set the expectation very low here, with the goal being very high, that if we can turn small medium business security support as the tier 1 of entry level jobs, then they can get enough exposure that we can then hire from into areas where we don't have a lot of funding. That includes higher ed sectors, right? So a landing spot for many, and this could be securing schools, this could be securing K through 12, and this could be securing small businesses, which collectively have a pretty good, I would say bargaining power is not the right word, but you can imagine what is that. But overall, I think that way we can have some kind of control or influence or even visibility into the demand. Because if Rob and I and a few of our other friends can go tag team and go increase the budget even for the largest corporation by 20-30%, it is not a sustainable thing. You cannot put money into then solve this problem. You have to have kind of a staircase model of expanding the cyber knowledge, experience, and capacity, and to get it to the places, saturate the market with cybersecurity professionals. But that will take time. So demand and supply, I think those two are areas that we have been focused on last 6 months as we were coming to the summit. We worked on those 3 angles. And got those 2 initiatives. One of them totally, rightfully, very fortunately funded. The second program we're working on very closely to get that funded. So I would leave this panel in George's capable hands to think about what are the areas that we can kind of look at the big picture. What are the areas we want to seek support and investment from? How can we use the higher ed sector as a launchpad also for cybersecurity training and the enablement, with the kind of risk that you and I probably are going to sign up for, but from there onwards take it forward to how to make it happen. A little bit of how. I think we all understand the whys. That's what we came into this summit for. But a little bit of how and what the mechanics of this would be really useful for us as an outcome, and we'll take that and launch into action. So thank you for listening to my my urge, and I really look forward to your thoughts and discussions, and all the best for this panel. Thank you, John. It's your show.
Awesome. Thank you for that fantastic introduction, Val. For those of you who don't know me, I'm George Finney. I'm the CISO for Southern Methodist University here in Dallas, Texas. It's in the 40s here in Texas, so it's just as cold as it is apparently up in Chicago. We're all kind of collectively shivering in our offices. Yeah, I'm really honored to be able to moderate the panel today. We've got such a great group of folks that really are passionate about higher education. So I'll introduce them a little bit and give them a chance to introduce themselves. But I think we all have our particular passions when it comes to security, and particularly in higher ed. So I think we'll give each of the folks a chance to to kind of give their soapbox, and then we'll dive into the roundtable from there. So if you haven't heard me talk before, my soapbox is really around security awareness, and focusing on the human element of security, because I think we can make a really big difference there. And we traditionally haven't focused on that particular area. So that's me. I'll hand it over to Rob if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure, thanks, Jordan. And welcome, it's great to see you all again. Again, Rob Belk, I'm a principal in our cyber practice at EY, based out of San Diego, though you might not know that with my coat on right now. I think I mentioned my blood is thinned. My background's in the military. I spent 20 years in the Navy, flew for a portion of that, went to grad school, got involved in cyber, went and worked in the Pentagon, and then joined EY, where I predominantly focus in higher education and cybersecurity, and quite in short terms. My soapbox has to do with overall governance. I really firmly believe that from a technology standpoint, there's a lot of focus on that. But for the most part, a lot of the things aren't any secrets. It's just a matter of, do we have the right governance in place to make sure that we can implement the technologies in a correct way?
Right on. Thanks, Rob. Lenita, if you want to go next.
Sure. I'm Lenita Collette. I'm the Deputy CIO and the Chief Information Security Officer for the University of Arizona. And my soapbox, as my title might indicate, is integrating tightly between infrastructure and security, and driving our security practice pretty deep into our overall practice, such that they are in lockstep. And so I really am an advocate of that. And I think I also am very passionate about pipeline, because the University of Arizona has some very compelling programs in cyber, and we hope to really help fill that pipeline that people are looking for.
Thank you. That's awesome. We'll talk more about the pipeline. Andrew, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Andrew Cordy. I'm the CISO for Indiana University. I've been there about 20 years doing information security, and I suppose I have a lot of soapboxes, but if I had to pick one, I think I would talk about making sure that our safeguards that we have our faculty, staff, and students trying to comply with, keeping those easy to comply with and sensible, ensuring that we don't have unintended consequences from people trying to work their way around them. So the usability of security, if I were to put it in a concise way.
And last but not least, Ruben, introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Ruben Perez. I'm a solution architect for the higher ed space out here in Elastic on the East Coast. And if I had to pick my latest soapbox that I come into contact with more often than not is basically doing more with less, whether that be budget, time, resources, what have you. Everyone's trying to stretch that extra bit out, whether it be a dollar or a mile or whatever rope you're provided. So helping people to find out how to do more with less in a more proactive approach is really where I'm finding my passion. Is really burning more often than not these days.
Right on, right on. So we'll start ladies first. So I'll go to you, Anita. When we talk about pipeline, the first thing that comes to my mind is really student workers. So I'd be curious. I've talked to people that have had success and also have had challenges with that. But are you helping to train the students that are studying cybersecurity there and in your SOC or in your other areas? How have you engaged with them, and has that been successful?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And we do work closely with our academic program to offer. Well, at first we were just working with student workers in a more sort of casual sense, but we have since moved forward to actually create a formal internship so that the students who are working with us in our SOC also are getting credit, and that their experience with us is tightly integrated with the curriculum that they're studying. And our programs cover the span from cyber engineering, operations, law and policy across the board. And we're a smaller shop compared to similar sized organizations, probably, because we have to do more with less. But within that shop, we have to cover the entire range of GRC activities and training and engineering and et cetera. We are highly data focused. Analytics are our lifeblood. And so the students in our program are exposed to pretty much anything that might be in their curriculum. So yes, we have moved towards a place where we're pretty integrated with that program, and we try to provide good experiences where we can. One of the challenges we have is how many students we can have at one time, because as all of you probably know, if you have someone who is new to the field, there's a fair amount more handholding that might be needed. In terms of what kinds of work we ask them to do and the expectations and whatnot, we actually set very high expectations. The students are adults. Their educational process and their work with us is serious, and we expect the same standards of behavior from them as any other employee. So I don't draw very distinct lines between student employees and other staff in terms of expectation or abilities. And so we have some fantastic folks coming through our program. A lot of them are returning military, for instance. And so, we're just very open to providing a full experience for the students that make it through our selection process to be in our internship programs. And they are competitive. So it kind of also gives the flavor of what it's like to compete for work once you graduate. So I think we have a pretty darn good program. My director of our Security Operations Center works closely with the program to make sure that we're doing a good job.
Now, I'll throw it over to you, Andrew. I don't know if you have students on your team, but have you found issues with that? I mean, some of the folks I've heard have talked about having reluctance to trust students to get the access they need to do all of the things that would really give them a fulfilling experience. Like, can they make firewall rule changes, or can they get into to databases to really help do a database audit or those kinds of things?
No, I agree with Anita on this. I find it very similar to onboarding any other employee. It's usually somebody you've never met, and you have to go through that process of learning to trust them. And if you don't learn to trust them pretty quickly, then you've got problems anyway. So I don't have that issue. And at IU we're hosting something called the OmniSOC, which is like a meta SOC for a number of institutions. And there's an internship program associated with that where the students spend, I think it's 4 weeks at Indiana learning about the OmniSOC. And Elastic actually has been very generous with providing training and funding for that. And they learn there, and then they go back to their home institutions that are OmniSOC members, and they spend some weeks there learning about their local security operation. Now that's looked a lot different this year. It's all been virtual, but I think it's still worked pretty well. The trust hasn't been an issue at all. It's more a matter of just getting the right people into the program and making sure that we are giving them the education. After all, that's what our mission is. So I think it's wholly appropriate.
Awesome. Rob, I know you probably get some of our interns into your program. I'm curious from your perspective as an employer, do you feel like the students coming out of these cybersecurity programs are prepared to deliver value day one? Because that's what we always hear is well, I can't get into cybersecurity because I don't have a certification, and I can't get a certification until I have 5 years of experience. So what do I do? And we've seen a lot of success with student hacking clubs that are going to the regional competitions. Students are getting some internships, or they're building their own networks. Is that what you're seeing, or are there gaps there?
No, I don't think necessarily that there are gaps there. The way that we've handled, at least within EY, is that there are a couple parallel paths that can come into the firm. The people that are very, very technical specific, and they want to go into what I consider more technical tracks. So these are the folks that may be going into pen testing or application security, which might be a different path than necessarily someone come more into a more generalist in a way. But for the most part, I think that the education that they have has been terrific, and we're getting a lot of wonderful talent coming in from the universities that we're sourcing from, and that's always been, it's great to get. At the same time, of course, we know it's a competitive market out there, and we know that there are a lot of people that are trying to get the same kinds of talent. So it's a constant competition, and we're grateful for the terrific students that graduate and come out of the universities into the firm. But we're also recognize that the demand is pretty high out there, and so we're always trying to provide them with the right opportunities so that they can grow. And then if they choose to go back into industry and then come back forth into consulting, we're happy to have them.
And so Ruben, I want to bring you in because I didn't realize that Elastic was giving away free training. I'm going to have to take advantage of that. How are you kind of interfacing? I mean, I'm just fascinated that I know we use Elastic to help visualize some things with our SIM, but are you seeing the same thing as Rob, getting students in engaged?
Yeah, so we have various programs that we try to sort of spider out into our community globally. I mean, we are born from open source, so I mean, we love to see getting them young, as my parents would say, right? Get them in young and coach them up. That way, when they go out into the field, they bring what they have with them and then some. I actually personally, just outside of Elastic, but communicating with people that I know, more often than not, I do find students and recent grads are the ones that sort of take the bull by the horns, because they're in that mental mind frame already where they're like, all right, I want to pick this up. I want to learn this new bit. I think this might be something to learn that'd be great. It'll help me in my field, or if not, it's just a passion project of mine. And we look for that stuff because that might be the next plugin, or that might be the next module that ends up being integrated in Elastic as a whole, and then provided to you folks. So we do see it. We don't root it out. We cultivate it as it comes.
Right on. So shifting gears a little bit, away from the pipeline of students, I think one of the criticisms of higher ed over the last several years has been that we're a soft target when it comes to cybersecurity. So I'll throw this out to the whole group, and you guys can just jump in. But what are your pain points when it comes to security? When you think about your technology stack, it's a pretty diverse set of really specific technologies that I think we're using in higher ed. And that's a challenge, because a lot of the larger tools, when you think of like a CASB, they've got integrations with maybe a great set of enterprise tools, but we're probably not using most of those. So in terms of protections, I think because we're so niche-y, that's a challenge. But also the technology we have is maybe a little older, a little out of date. We've got lots of different legacy applications. We've got lots of weird use cases, across the campus. A lot of us are decentralized. I could just keep going with the list of challenges we face. But when you think of one pain point, what's your biggest pain point?
Well, I would say, and the fact that our environment is very distributed is probably our biggest pain point. So, I mean, we are a collection of highly federated and loosely linked departments. I think over time we're probably moving to be a little bit more collaborative, in part driven by some economic factors and whatnot. But and we value that independence because we value innovation, and strict hierarchy and lockdown situations really are not very conducive to innovation. So our lifeblood is innovation. Our need is to be collaborative. And so our biggest challenge really is the human and technical challenges associated with that distributed environment. That said, I think we are finding some excellent ways to overcome that, and perhaps we can delve into that a little bit more, but I'll just let my colleagues speak about their biggest challenges.
What's the joke about thousands of diverse faculty and staff united by a common parking problem?
Yeah.
At least we got rid of the parking problem during pandemic. But yeah, I think the one I was going to say kind of flows from the decentralization, which is asset inventory has always been the thorn in my side. And when I say asset, I'm referring both to like computer devices and systems, but also data.
Right.
And if you don't have an inventory of those things, how the heck can you possibly secure all that? And talking about my earlier metaphor of being like a city, it's just really impossible to know where everything is and what's being done with it. Doesn't mean you should give up, throw your hands up, and not try to do it. We have to try to get as close as we can, but that's always been a challenge, and I think it always will be a challenge, even as we move to the cloud and we become. I think we're becoming less diverse when it comes to technology. I think we're starting to converge on certain platforms, at least at Indiana, we're making the effort to do that. But we're always going to have a lot of diversity in that area, just because of all the different activities and just all the different areas being explored, research and different disciplines. Different technologies lend themselves better to some than others. So we're always going to have that issue, and it's just, how do we get 80%? How do we get 85%?
If I made that same point, again, maybe it's because I see a lot of things through the governance lens, but having worked in lots of different industries and obviously in government as well, I honestly believe you all have the hardest job out there. People, I don't think, don't understand that while some sectors may have a couple very key issues they need to deal with, higher ed has all of them. And as we talk about the porousness of the enterprise, that's true. It's probably 1,000 times truer for higher ed as well. Researchers have their own grants; they can procure whatever they want. They don't necessarily need to go through central IT or to go buy that, or even from their school or unit. There are so many partnerships that are happening outside of the university and with other universities, and that means data is flowing in and out as well. And so it becomes, this really seems a thorny problem. So how you get people to work together to try to understand that these issues do exist and that they should have their own, they have the responsibility to support the common good that is the university, I think is one of the major challenges. But to your point, George, I think the good news is that awareness is really starting to come around, from what I can see, both within higher education, but also in the work that we do in other sectors and at the board level, where there's a lot of interest that's coming in, and that the more interested and more focus that comes to the issue of cybersecurity, I think that the more that people, it comes to their mind, like, okay, maybe I should be careful about what I do with my laptop, or I don't just leave it unencrypted and forget it's on the bus. Things like that will help out. I mean, it's not going to solve every problem, obviously, and this is why there's a lot of work to be done. But getting everyone to work together as one unit, that's to me is the number one challenge.
Yeah, I'm to piggyback on everyone. My biggest thing that I've seen is just trying to protect that blind side, right? Gone are almost the days where you have a big tower CPU, and even more so, I'm seeing that laptops, I don't think they'll ever really be obsolete, but I can do nearly as much as I can on my laptop with my smartphone. And if I want a bigger screen, I could get a tablet of sorts. I mean, we have children that are not even in school yet, pre-K, messing around on tablets. So, I mean, how do you bring all that together and say, all right, let's normalize on this asset and then protect it. And by the time you're ready to go, a newer one came out, or the next flavor of the smaller, more mobile device came out. I think keeping up with the times and protecting the blind side in terms of what's out there. What do you know about that you can try and protect on? What don't you know about, and how do you find out about that? Like, do you only ever get alerted if they get on the network? Or what if they pull data from point A on the network to point B off the network? I mean, that's nearly impossible to protect against. And worse off is when they put it back onto the network through a USB drive or something, now you have a big problem because they could have brought some viruses or whatnot, and then it's a whole thing where, all right, we didn't know that this was potentially a fault point, but we identify that it is, but it might be too late. And at that point, you're just playing catch up. So keeping up with the times and protecting against the unknown, which, I mean, now that I verbalize it, sounds nearly impossible.
You know, it's funny you say that. When you were talking, Ruben, I had this, you know, flashback to last year. I went into, I was working with a faculty member and went into their lab. They were a neuroscientist, but they're, you know, I realized I was standing in front of a Windows NT computer, and like it was all I could do just to not, like, you know, start pulling plugs. And, you know, I mean, you know, as I, you know, dug in, like, actually, no, we had already worked with them on it. We had, like, hot glued the network port closed, so they couldn't get it on. But, you know, they couldn't run the electron microscope
Right.
on any other computer hardware. You know, and, you know, the software, they just couldn't, you know, do an upgrade without another new grant. So that, you know, they were just making do. So how do you discover those? Oh my gosh. You know, how do you protect it? You know, yeah, it's a huge challenge. But you know, so I'll switch gears to the opposite problem. And, you know, okay, you were talking about tablets. You know, I just wonder, you know, in 20 years, you know, I can super glue ports to a Windows NT machine shut. You know, how am I going to do that with the you know, the Galaxy tablet that you know, is 20 years old, but is required for this one class that we can't do any other way? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, George, what I love about what you. I'm having some echo. Hold on. There. Is that better? There was a little bit of echo, but now it stopped. One of the things that I thought of right away when you said super glue the network port, which I absolutely love, that is meeting people where they are, right? And understanding their critical role for the university. It's like, you know, when we have our IT blinders on, we're looking at that situation and we're thinking, oh my God, how could they? Well, they can, because they have a $7 million grant to do the whatever it is. And this part of it is critical for that. And so you can't interrupt that, but you absolutely can meet them where they are. And I think as part of that, and how we're starting to deal with the situation is to distribute the process of understanding risk. And that's across the board. So risk in terms of who's taken the information security awareness training, risk in terms of, has your IT department done an asset inventory, risk in terms of, are all of your technical contracts, do they have the right provisions in place to protect the university? And so we have pretty much deputized risk managers in all of our major departments. And we also developed a web application that steps them through a process of doing a risk analysis. Because, I mean, who knows how to do a risk analysis, right? I mean, It's not like we have been able to go out and hire risk specialists for each of our departments. But you know, under the hood, it's not terribly difficult if you can get some guidance to do it. And so we offer training in how to do risk management properly, and then we offer a web application that steps people through the process of looking at their risk, and it nicely spits out a security plan for them at the end, so that they can go through the process and have something tangible that they then can work on for each annual cycle that we send them through that. And so, you know, it's like hyper collaboration, but the key to it is that accountability piece, where we have convinced university leadership that there's no way that the Central Information Security Office can know what's going on in all of the various departments. And so we've proposed this structure, and we proposed this accountability distribution that's been accepted by our leadership and highly supported by them up through the Board of Regents. And we are able to then, you know, train and help and get people to participate. So how are you going to know? Well, you're certainly not going to know from a central perspective. You have a much better chance from a distributed department perspective. Still not perfect, but certainly a lot better.
So we actually rolled out a Qualtrics survey to help generate our risk register. So you and I are going to have to talk offline about trading, because I definitely want to see your website.
I'm happy to share.
So let's talk about meeting users where they are. And you know, today, you know, they're not here. They're out, you know, at home or in the cloud somewhere. So you know, for us, you know, I think cloud is incredibly important. You know, way more so, you know, than it was maybe just a year ago. But you know, when we did an inventory earlier this year about what our cloud services are, we were seeing that, you know, probably 50% or more of our SaaS-based of our service catalog is now SaaS-based. You know, I wonder, you know, where you guys are at in that digital transformation post-COVID era, and you know, how are you managing your cloud risks? You know, so some things that jump to the top of my mind are, you know, visibility into your cloud providers. You know, are you getting, you know, logs from them? You know, are you jumping on the CASB bandwagon, or you know, are you you know, asking them to do different things for you? So you know, throw that out there to the whole group.
Yeah, from what I've seen, auditing is the biggest sort of number 1, 2, and 3 in terms of cloud usage. Seeing who did what from where and at what time, and were they supposed to do that. I want an alert or an email or a message or a ticket set up for all of the above. And so with our offering, we can certainly help facilitate some of that auditing, but some folks that are skittish to go in the cloud in the first place, or just sort of getting their feet wet, they don't know what they don't know. So they're like, you know, I want to do this, but how? And then you fall back into that doing more with less. Like they have maybe 1 or 2 people, not enough time in the day to let them do their day-to-day job, plus learn a new technology or learn a new portal to manage this new system. So it becomes, I think it always boils down to, at least in my view, how much enablement you can get at a particular end user, and for them to absorb it as quickly as possible. And that's why, George, as you mentioned earlier, we are giving it away, as much enablement as we can, because we recognize as a company that, I mean, we can't stretch ourselves out that thin and be there for every one of our customers and our end users. So we need to teach them how to fish so that they can be somewhat self-sufficient. That way, when they bring us in, it's a more detailed and directive discussion.
I thought you guys were named Elastic because we were stretching you thin.
Yeah. I mean, we are certainly Elastic, nearly Stretch Armstrong stretched out, to date myself a little bit.
I'm originally from Maine, and so I like to say I'm very much a Yankee when it comes to not spending if I don't have to. So So I appreciate that philosophy very, very much. And we have to. I mean, we're a public institution. It's student tuition, taxpayer dollars. We have a very strong need to be good stewards of the few resources that we have. And you know, our way of approaching our security practice involving lots of folks from around campus does help enable us to keep our teams small. And I will say, in terms of the topic about movement to the cloud, we're cloud first whenever and wherever possible. It's a whole lot better generally than servers under people's desks, right? So it doesn't mean you don't still have strong needs for auditing and appropriate security in place for cloud resources, but you start off a little bit better than you might otherwise. And so, cloud first, and we find that if we have an opportunity to build something new, we also tend to do much better at being efficient. And so I think one of the things we have in higher ed a lot is technical debt. And so the movement to the cloud has allowed us to start fresh with some things. I'll just admit that we're Splunk users, but we built it from the beginning in AWS, and our costs are very low. I have one fantastic engineer. It's always under the hood, right? One fantastic engineer, and he has just done wonders for us in terms of building out an analytical engine for us that is highly cost effective, scalable, et cetera. So much of the benefit of moving to the cloud, we're just reaping that. And we've been cloud first for quite some time. For anyone that's followed our cloud journey, we were early adopter, and so we're pretty well set. My CIO loves to advertise that. I think it was in 2018, after a huge push to go cloud, we spent a total of $11,000 for the whole year on any kind of hardware. So he does trot that out. So we've spent a little bit here and there since then, but we really, and you need it top down. You need a really strong push to say we're going to do this, and it will have benefits far beyond this single decision that we've made.
A quick question, please, on that. Is that predominantly from central IT, or are you seeing uptake from the rest of the school team that's leveraging the AWS?
So actually, we are in the first bit of our journey to invite others on campus on board, and we do see a lot of interest. We have, most universities, my colleagues will know what I say when I say colo, right? Most central IT units have the ability to offer good environment for servers, and so we have a co-location area where people can bring their hardware, and then in some cases they'll do everything from then on, and in some cases we'll take on the responsibility for them for the infrastructure. But we're starting our journey by migrating all of that to the cloud whenever or wherever possible, and then we are currently developing a service that is basically intended to be as hands-off as possible, and really operations as a service too, so that it'll be secure, there'll be reporting readily available, all that good stuff, so that our campus partners can take advantage of that and just kind of sort of push up the stack, so to speak, their attention away from nuts and bolts and the wire and forward to spending their time helping their departments with challenges that are closer to the educational and research experience. So that's our hope, to just keep moving it up. With the few resources we have, we want them very people connected versus machine connected.
Yeah, the reason I asked is I literally feel like that's where the future is, because you mentioned about the $7 million grant and that the compute that's required for that, and often depending upon what the grant requirements are, they may not necessarily have priced in the security aspect of it. Yeah. And so the more that can be handled for them, it makes it even that much more competitive for the research university, because they can leverage the secure environments that are provided and then put that into their grant proposals, and it just makes more attractive to win those grants. So that's why I feel like considering we keep talking about the dollars that we have available at our disposal, the more that we can make it efficient and a better environment, I feel like that's where the future should be. Off other soapbox.
Okay. Yeah, and Andrew, any comments about IU and your cloud journey?
So we have we are not cloud first. We have what we call an opportunistic cloud strategy, which means that if we think a workload is right for the cloud, then we'll use the cloud. If not, we have a really robust VM infrastructure, geographically diverse and everything. And our approach to trying to inventory that or keep sort of keep tabs on our SaaS usage and our other cloud usage has more been administrative controls than it has technical. So we don't have a lot of technical tools for that, and that's something where I'd like to improve. We do have some pretty involved processes. For example, we do an assessment for any cloud, any SaaS engagement involving sensitive data. So, and that's pretty involved. And as for platform as a service, we are in most cases now we've centralized everything onto a single contract so that we have administrative control over those environments for all the workloads. And what we've been doing lately is just evaluating each of those platforms, each of the major platforms in turn, to try to make sure that we're providing the best, most secure, clean slate for departments and people wanting to put workloads into the cloud. So for an institution of our size, that's actually pretty good. But that's not to say that I wouldn't like, some robust CASB technology, and we continue to look at those tools and look at the especially ramping up the platform native tools and making sure we're making the most use out of those, because I don't think we are now, and I don't think most organizations are right now. I think a lot of organizations are still struggling. They're still stuck on how do we continue, and I guess this is another soapbox of mine for security folks. I see a lot of security folks wanting to stick with the safeguards they've always known. And so how can we get our cloud workloads running through our central firewall, rather than thinking you've got to change your whole mindset to think about the platform, the cloud platform native safeguards that are very good, that Microsoft and Google and Amazon have provided for you. And it takes a lot of effort to learn those. And it's not just the security team that needs to learn them. It's to get back to what Anita said about integrating this throughout IT. It's all your IT need to understand that complete new approach to everything. So that's where we're headed right now and where we're focused.
Wow. Oh, Anita, you're muted.
Of course I am. I feel the pain, Andrew, in terms of how we've always done things. I mean, even things as basic as firewalls, like it's something that we absolutely rely on, and it's like, okay, how's the firewall? Where's the firewall? What are we doing? New rules, et cetera. And it's like, well, actually, how much is that going to help us? Like, it already doesn't help a lot for East-West, and it may not be very helpful for remote, depending. And, can you get people to turn on the VPN? Well, probably not. So I think we need to really take a hard look at some of the technologies that we've relied on for a long time. Not that they shouldn't still be part of the toolkit, because absolutely, there's a place for things, but I think we need to really, for instance, look at microsegmentation for network purposes, and controlling access at the point. And so I think it's one of those sort of evolutionary times for us to take a hard look at what we're doing and what really makes sense versus just continuing to do what we've always done.
I'm curious. Are you guys doing any kind of decryption I think that's the flip side is our firewall is really valuable anymore, because if 90% of all network traffic today is encrypted, all of our signatures, all of the filtering that goes beyond ports is much less effective today. So our next gen firewalls are really now just last gen. Is that a challenge that you guys have addressed? Because I haven't figured out how to address it, right? Because so many of my folks are users. We're essentially just an ISP for the folks that live on campus.
Yeah.
There's that component. Even just doing it in the data center is extremely complex, particularly when you layer on things like microsegmentation. So. Is that something you guys have looked at addressing?
We certainly took a look at it and are not, because so we start from the top with the privacy concerns, because I try to have the work that I do governed as much as possible by our privacy governance committee. And I think it's really important to have that check and balance. And so I think there would be strong concerns there. There's also performance concerns. My network team is like, because their bread and butter is make it stable, make it fast, and so anything that might impede that is not something they want to really hear about. And so no, it's not something that we're really spending a lot of effort on. We poked at it a bit. There were some technical issues with the products that we were trying to use that were going to take a lot to work through. And so, sum total didn't really seem worth it. And it's interesting, the whole conversation around Apple providing more and more secure methods for people to consume things, and then government reaction to, we've got to have a back door. Following our conversation is that conversation in kind of in a microcosm. And so I think it really comes down to identity management, access controls, trying to deal with it at the edge. A lot of my thoughts these days are shifting towards edge computing. What does that really mean? How do we protect it? What does that look like in the overall structure of a university type environment? So, yeah.
Sorry, Andrew, were you going to jump in?
I just agree. We're in the same boat. Practically, politically, it's not something we want to do to get in the middle. It's even kind of contrary to our own message in a lot of ways. And my answer is the same. It's just endpoint. We've got to instrument every endpoint and try to aggregate all of that data and do data analysis on feeds that we can get from endpoints rather than from the middle of the connection. And that in some sense that helps us solve well, not solve, but it helps us get closer to solving the asset inventory problem as well, because you got to find those endpoints to instrument them.
So I know we touched on privacy a little bit, but I'm curious to get you guys' read on big data. So for us, we kind of launched an online master's program in data science, but we also started at the same time kind of eating our own dog food, and we stood up a data governance committee, and we really wanted to focus on privacy, but we wanted to figure out how we could use data science to improve the university experience. And one of the first things we worked on was student retention, and looking at all of the factors that are at play there, and in order to help people. But we still had those same hurdles to cover when it came to privacy and access. But I guess at a much broader level, I mean, Val in the introduction talked about how universities are like cities, and I know Andy, you've used that analogy several times. So oh my gosh, how are you guys using big data, particularly around the pandemic? I know when SMU kind of launched our kind of COVID dashboard to help launch that, but we were able to do that quickly because we already had that homework done of the infrastructure behind it to launch that and the visualizations. But I wonder what your guys' next steps future looks like when it comes to big data, particularly when we're all kind of working remotely from home.
Well, so I mean, we had the same experience with the re-entry to campus and COVID, and so I would say that it's very interesting. So this is a public health challenge. We are a city. We have an obligation to keep our community safe, not just within the campus, but also the surrounding area. So we have to be a good partner. It actually is life or death. It's scary. So like you're saying, George, we were already well set up to have the data. And what's interesting to me is this transformation of, we collected machine data for infrastructure monitoring purposes. And guess what? Now we're repurposing that data and the implied human behavior that data represents to help us make critical decisions about what's happening. Everything from how well is Zoom working for our remote practice to, where's the biggest density on campus that we might need to worry about, COVID transmission. And so we have been leveraging the data that we've gathered for other purposes, and we've been rapidly building, new both sources of data and correlations of various types of data to inform not just our IT practice now, but also a lot of leadership decisions around how we're going to stay safe and then how we're going to get better. And so, and it's growing because the demand just appeared, and we weren't really prepared for that. We had our traditional institutional research and analytics practice, where it's all about iPads numbers and graduation rates and all of that kind of data. What we didn't necessarily anticipate is how valuable the machine data would end up being. And we tend to gather that data and correlate it in different ways than we do with the institutional data. So that's a very interesting, thing that we've seen happen, and the demand for it has just skyrocketed. And the use of other tools that we hadn't thought of before. We're making huge use of like Microsoft Forms and Microsoft Bookings and all of these things to just like gather data quickly, schedule people for tests. We have a big test, trace, treat program to try to stay safe. It's just been insane the last 6 months.
We kind of rescheduled all of our rooms, and we wanted to figure out what the optimal breakdown is for what classes we forced to be virtual versus what we could still offer. But just to do that, we had to take all of our classrooms on campus. We kind of programmed in this algorithm to find it, and we actually have a supercomputer on campus. And it took, it's probably a top 1,000 supercomputer, and it took a week to find a class schedule. So it's so complicated so quickly. So I know we're running close to the end. Why don't we go around the table with just a brief 20-second closing thought? Rob, I'll start with you.
Great. Okay, 20 seconds. I would just say that the great thing about universities, of course, is that they're innovative. and that if you're leveraging the innovation that comes from within the community and the work that you're doing, it's become self-fulfilling. So the more that we can be doing to be helping protect the university and to give it the space to innovate and then reuse it, I think the better.
Ruben, why don't you go next?
Yeah. So in this day and age, everybody's sort of being thrust into a work from home or distributed system. I think that getting your hands on as much knowledge as you can to do what you need to do is going to be paramount. And that doesn't always come down to just software and whatnot, but personal. So I think if you married those two, it'll help everyone involved sort of progress and let's work together. Again, open source community, we live and breathe it, and so that's where I'm coming from.
Just bringing together a couple of threads. One advantage to the whole remote work thing, I think, is that remote conferences are a little bit more accessible for those that maybe couldn't afford to or didn't have the resources to attend live conferences. I think this is going to improve our talent pipeline by making it more diverse. So I'm really looking forward to seeing, like, are people getting interested in information security and able to learn better than they were before. And I'm going to reap the benefits of that by hiring them.
That's wonderful. And I will just say, be data-driven, be collaborative, and we'll get through this.
Right on. Thank you for that, Anita. Just a virtual round of applause for our distinguished panel. With that, Val, do you want to close us out?
Of course. No, this has been great. I've been actually seeing you guys on the big screen here, and it felt like I'm in a live conference.
Nice.
So great to get the gist of the conversation, and I think this is such a high impact and high visibility topic now. Especially during the COVID, and what we can and cannot, what we can learn from this, what opportunities you can take advantage of. And I think, Andrew, your comment about how can we take advantage of the remote learning that we can now, right? Earlier, online thing was, okay, go or not. I mean, there are too many of them now. You have to choose where to go. You came to the right place, and those who have joined this conference probably have come to the right place, I would say. But I think nonetheless, it's an amazing platform now that we are digitally connected. We can take advantage of that. The class, I think yesterday, Nasir Mehman, who joined our cyber capacity program in the session, mentioned that in the classrooms in New York, you'd have probably 50 to 100 people you can pack in, and real estate is so costly. They went live, and now they can reach 5,000 at the same time, and it becomes more affordable, accessible for many. And I think this is probably that digital revolution that we have been all waiting for, that education becomes accessible, cybersecurity becomes affordable, and we can all become secure, right? Hopefully, and it's a good positive and negative for everyone. I think the cyber criminals, somebody in the last panel actually shared about this, that the most innovative and entrepreneurial success has been cyber criminals. Cyber criminals have really changed the game against the real economy, right? That's another way to look at it. But I think overall, being from this profession, I would say we are used to seeing bad things and then turn them around. Our job is to keep them out of sight, right? I mean, probably we are recognized for the 10 things that they see that we shut out versus the million that we they don't see outside. So I think telling that story and the wonderful work that you all are doing in your respective roles will be not only memorable, but also I think it'll be historic in this during these times of COVID, and what we can take away from this. So thank you so much for your thoughts and coming back again to reinforce the need for cybersecurity in higher education sector. Those that have been tuned in still, I think yesterday we had when we closed out the Australia Cyber Hour, it was a full packed session. So hopefully took away really good learnings from this. This would also be available online for those who want to see this. And if you're tuning in the posterity, of this, please ensure that you look back in the roundtable discussion that we have and where we came from in the last 2 weeks. We have a phenomenal session tomorrow. In fact, if you all want to join, I know it's going to be early in West Coast also for Rob, you, and I know Lanita as well. But 8 o'clock Central tomorrow, we have I would say the heart and soul of Cyber Future Foundation, which is it's a global hour of cyber about hope, humility, and humanity. How can cyber drive that mission? So we're going to close that, and then the second hour tomorrow is going to be around third-party risk management and supply chain security. That is going to be followed by a risk and resiliency hour that we have a research paper that we did at World Economic Forum is going to be presented. And we'll close out at 11 o'clock Central tomorrow, the summit, with a look towards what do you want Cyber Future Foundation to look like and contribute towards 2025 and build our next 5 years. So fantastic session so far, and this one included. Tomorrow is going to be another great closeout day. Thank you so much. Be well, take care, and see you again.
Thank you. And thank you, George.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.